When the Boers knew war was coming with the British, they set out to find the best rifles they could find. And at that time, it was the Mauser.
In 1895, Boer governments had looked at Mauser and found this was the end-all rifle. At that time, then the Boers start ordering rifles from Mauser. Ludwig Loh in Berlin was making them. And these rifles proved to be an incredible, formidable rifle in their hands. One of the most impressive and important parts about the Mauser and its use against the British forces during the Second Anglo-Boer War was the fact that you could load 5 rounds into a Mauser with just your thumb.
What that rifle did was meld with the fighting style of the Burger. He fought as a mounted infantryman. There wasn't, some big Boer supply column to attack. There was no way to envelop Boers because they could just move. They could just get out of your way if they wanted to do so, if they didn't have a fixed position that they were trying to defend. And they were able to literally decimate British units.
They fired a cartridge that, theoretically at least, was much superior to the .303 British. The 7mm is a pretty flat shooting cartridge for its day.
The volume of fire that they were able to bring against the British was a big surprise. Beyond that, the Boers really knew how to shoot. It was quoted by several British officers, anyone within 600 yards of the Boer line is a dead man.
Trust in God and the Mauser. That was an Afrikaans slogan during the Second Anglo-Boer War. And if any rifle is emblematic of that conflict, it is the Boer Mauser in 7x57. It was an extremely effective rifle, really kind of state-of-the-art at the time. You have to realize that in the 1890s, there was a tremendous explosion in small arms technology. You had the smokeless powder cartridge, you had the modern clip-loading magazine rifle, and that's what the Boer Mauser was. You think about the British Army in the same era, and the Lee Enfield rifle was not a bad rifle, but it wasn't a Mauser. It was not as flat shooting as the 7x57, which is kind of a medium cartridge for Mauser. There was 8mm coming. But it fed from a stripper clip. There are little notches cut in the back of the receiver, and you take the sheet metal stripper clip, put it in there, you can ram 5 cartridges in rapidly. And these guns were used to great effect by really probably some of the world's most natural mounted infantry. And those were the Boer Burgers that served in commandos during the war in South Africa.
Anyone who really collects Mausers and understands how they move forward will think, well, you have one modification and you just build on that next modification, and each of these are a model of indicating an improvement. Well, not so with Boer Mausers. While they'll have model of 1895, model of 1896, model of 1897, or just plain 1897, it's really not a model. It's just the manufacture year. And there are variations within that that can really get very confusing. And there's a lot of good information out there on the internet, and there's also some not so good information. But really, if one has a deep interest in it, Dr. Ron Bester's book on Boer arms and David George's 2 volumes on the carvings on the stocks are really the best. Finding Boer Mausers in the United States isn't all that easy, because most of these, understandably, were taken back as souvenirs to Britain, Australia, New Zealand, That's where most of them are. Bannermans themselves, although they sold Boer German belt buckles, their catalogs don't seem to show Boer rifles. So that's not a point of import. During the big 1950s, 1960s consortium led by Armies that brought all the British weapons into the U.S., now some of the firearms there could have had some Boer rifles come in there, but they're not easy to find here.
Surprisingly, there are very few Boer Mausers available on today's collector's market. That's all the time that we have for this week. If you like this show and you're not an NRA member, you need to join right now. Go to AmericanRifleman.org. I'm Mark Keefe, and I'll see you next week right here on American Rifleman Television.